We're just ready to move to our next presentation on the Manchester stand. But before we do it, as some of you may know, it's been budget day today. And there's been all sorts of hints, trails left over the last 36 hours since we've been here about what that might mean in terms of devolution for Greater Manchester. And I'm going to ask Eamon, my colleague, to just give you some of the key headlines before we move on with the presentation proper. So, Eamon.
Thanks, Howard. You'll all have, I'm sure many of you have seen some of the headlines that have come through from the Chancellor's announcement earlier on today. So I won't go through those. Just wanted to focus on what specifically will be announced in respect of the next phase of devolution for Greater Manchester, which builds on our 4 previous deals plus the deal on health and social care. So this is Devo 6, and it all happened since November 14. Significant new measures that will impact on GM. Along with London, we will be a pilot area for 100% retention of business rates from 2017, 3 years ahead of the original schedule. And that's really good news. I think anyone who heard Howard speak this morning will know it gives us the opportunity to really shape the incentives to support local economic growth. So that's a really, really important step for us. There will be also significant devolution of powers over criminal justice to Greater Manchester. So, yeah, Howard gets to run the prisons after all this time, which comes as a great relief to those inside them, I'm sure. But this is actually, seriously, it's very, very important because our ability to integrate offender management with everything else that we do around complex families and troubled families and complex individuals is really, really important. We've struggled to do that up to now. So having the ability to integrate that alongside other interventions is really, really important. And that's backed up by what sounds a fairly bureaucratic statement in the announcement, that we will have what's called a Life Chances Investment Fund. But this is a response to our demand to not have to respond time and time and time again to individual siloed incentive schemes from government, but actually to bring a number of those together into a single fund that can enable us to intervene effectively and design those interventions locally. So that's really, really important. We'll also have a greater single pot for economic growth, pooling transport, local growth fund and GM investment fund. And again, that gives us greater flexibility to work with business to help shape our interventions going forward. And we've got further commitments to work on skills. We're not yet there on skills, but there is a commitment to work further with government to enable us to better match the output of the skills industry to the requirement of the GM economy. And similarly, there's a commitment to work further with a review in September on our work on housing, and in particular on our efforts to try and persuade government that actually it's legitimate for us to invest long-term equity to unlock sites that are currently non-viable. And the final thing specific to GM is an agreement that we will be able to develop our own framework for business regulation, which I think is a very, very important step, and again will enable us to have a much greater influence over how regulatory frameworks apply within the GM conurbation. You may well also have picked up a number of announcements in respect of transport infrastructure, and I won't steal John's thunder, but HS3, as it's been called by government, which is effectively the speeding up of the Manchester-Leeds link, was announced today. Funding for a 4-lane M62 and feasibility study for a Trans-Pennine tunnel were all announced today. So progress on some of our transport asks as well. So that's just a quick gallop through some of the issues that have moved further on as a result of the latest devolution deal to GM. I hope that's of interest. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Eamon. Now we move on to the presentation proper. I think in all sorts of ways, transport has figured very, very highly in all our conversations over the last 36 hours. John Lamonte, who's Chief Executive of Transport for Greater Manchester, apart from digging the roads up in the city centre, has also spent a large part of his time working with his peers, working with his colleagues around the north of England in order to agree those shared priorities, which I think have been so important in creating the platform for some of the announcements that have been made today and will continue to be made, I'm sure, over the coming months. So John's going to take you through the strategic overview, what transport and our priorities mean for Greater Manchester, and my colleague will then start, Karen will then start to provide a very clear spatial focus for some of the opportunities our transport plans are providing, particularly in and around Port Salford. John.
Well, thanks very much, Howard. Good afternoon, everybody. I came up from London to Manchester 3 years ago because I thought it was the best transport narrative outside London. That was about trebling the size of the tram network. It was about delivering on a capital programme of interchanges. And at that stage, no one had talked about the Northern Powerhouse. They hadn't talked about Devo Mank. They hadn't talked about all the things that we're now doing with Transport for the North. So my job in the next few minutes is just to talk about what that really means on the ground for Greater Manchester. And rather than just talk about it, let me show you what it's about.
One hour and 4 minutes after it leaves Euston, a high-speed train will arrive at Manchester Airport. And just 9 minutes later, its passengers will step off at Piccadilly Station. Set for completion by 2033, HS2, the new electric spine for the UK, is a game-changer for the economies of the north of England. Transformative investment is also being developed for Northern Powerhouse Rail to deliver rapid and seamless east-west travel between northern cities. These two giant infrastructure projects, HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail, will deliver much greater speed, capacity and connectivity, linking and strengthening the economies of the north. Electrification of the North's railway network is also underway, and the Northern Hub is already delivering a programme of targeted upgrades. And investment is not limited to rail. Transport for the North is overseeing a joined-up approach to freight and logistics, integrated ticketing and motorway linkages. Together, these commitments will release the North's true economic potential and help to rebalance the UK economy. It's a well-understood and successful model of development, one that drives mainland Europe's most productive regions, like the Rhine-Ruhr in Germany. In Greater Manchester, it is investment allied with the city region's transport reforms that is creating compelling development opportunities in the regional centre and across the wider city region. Transport for Greater Manchester is developing outline residential and retail schemes as part of the Interchange Renewal Programme, helping the districts to meet their residential building targets on town centre and brownfield sites. It's estimated that transport investment will add 37 billion to the North's current annual GDP of 289 billion. So the economic prize is enormous. And backing the programme is a robust partnership bringing together government, Treasury and the combined authorities to drive forward the agenda. At the heart of Northern Powerhouse Rail sits Piccadilly, already one of the busiest multimodal stations outside London. And when HS2 arrives, residents close to Piccadilly will have quicker commuter times to the capital than many living in Greater London's suburbs. Two major development opportunities exist adjacent to Piccadilly Station, representing a significant easterly expansion of the city, and a generational opportunity to deliver exemplar urban schemes and a lasting legacy to these gateway sites. In the area around the old Mayfield station south of Piccadilly, the Mayfield Partnership, comprising of Manchester City Council, TfGM and London and Continental Railways, are well advanced in finding a joint venture partner with the skills and ambition to deliver the master plan. To the north of the station, a new area called Piccadilly Central is being envisaged to capitalise on the arrival of HS2. Manchester City Council, TfGM and Bennett's Associates have created the Piccadilly Strategic Regeneration Framework, spanning 14 million square feet of mixed-use space, which will deliver a vibrant new quarter next to the new transport hub. Together, the partners are ensuring that the investment in transport infrastructure will drive economic growth. And while all the cities of the North stand to benefit, Greater Manchester, with the largest economy, will be at the epicentre of the Northern Powerhouse. It's a journey that has already begun.
So what I hope the film demonstrates pretty well is just the sheer scale of transport investment and the way our position as Greater Manchester at the heart of the Northern Powerhouse is really going to transform Greater Manchester. What are we doing? We're bringing the capital closer to us. We are getting that super connected network of northern city regions, now announced as HS3, and really that's creating a lot of development opportunities all of its own. We're transforming land values, we're generating new uses for those sites that really offer up really new changes, and we can really maximise their potential. And nowhere is that more evident than in the regional centre itself, the core of the conurbation. We all know about the number of people, the fact that it's growing, the increasing in number of jobs, and that growth forecast is destined to continue. It's the same thing you see in lots of cities around the world. You see this clustering of businesses, especially where they're successful. They've got world-class connectivity. And here's the stats that go behind it. It really is a successful opportunity. So what I want to do is just to highlight three opportunities, starting with Mayfield. Mayfield's really seen as the first phase of a wider regeneration plan for Piccadilly, and that's really making Piccadilly the North's best connected place. It's a huge site, and just that's the railway through the middle of it with the Mayfield site to the south side. It's a huge site that's going to create a huge distinct district all of itself. It's going to shape and define a new gateway to the regional centre, and it's effectively going to link the centre to a regenerating Eastern Manchester as well. Now, as it's the first phase of this operation, it is the most advanced, and as the film said, we've got a strong partnership between Manchester City Council, London Continental Railways and ourselves, and we're fortunate that private sector interest in that has been really strong. We're looking to select a delivery partner in July this year and a delivery programme over the next 10 years with significant government interest in accommodation. And even on its own terms, actually, Mayfield represents one of Greater Manchester's really big opportunities. The 3 million square feet there covers a whole range of uses. So the development includes a substantial residential offer and as well as quite a substantial increase to Manchester's growing hotel opportunities. And that's going to be linked with a substantial retail and hospitality offer. So there's quite a lot to Mayfield, but what people have been telling us for some time is actually they could do, much we heard this morning actually, with more of a green space to it. So the opportunity has been taken to have a new city park there, some 6 acres. But back in the sooty days of industrial Manchester, you wouldn't have wanted very much to have your rivers opened up there. But now if we remediate the River Medlock, if we release it from its culverts, it can become a core part of that city park. Let me turn now to Piccadilly. As the film's really said, it's really got a fair claim to be one of the best connected sites in the country. And it already benefits from strong links now, but the sort of information we've had from government today about the investment in Piccadilly in HS3 means that it's going to be the best connected place in the country. It's already got some of the best access to the airport. It's got access to national networks, it's going to have access to high-speed networks, and as we've heard today, it's going to have access to Northern Powerhouse Rail, HS3, that's going to unify the North's economy. And not least does it also have access to a very well-connected local public transport network so that we can get people out into all the areas of Greater Manchester. The scale of opportunity is huge. We're tapping into the opportunity from a growing economy here. The stats are there for you to see. It's right at the centre of this conurbations hub. So let me move on to the broader Piccadilly Strategic Regeneration Framework. And that's looking to maximise the value from this Piccadilly station at its core. Now, there are 4 elements to this development, and the film talked about it. We've already talked about Mayfield, it's the first one, but we've got 3 areas to complement it: Piccadilly North, the East Village, and Piccadilly Central. And these are going to create new districts all of their own. They're going to have fantastic connectivity. They're easy walking distance from a really true multimodal hub. And that's going to be state-of-the-art. It's going to combine rail, as I've already talked about, Metrolink, the tram network, buses, removed now from Piccadilly Gardens, closer to where they need to be, a coach station, all the various different forms of transport connected in one. And what it's going to do is provide ready access into the emerging neighbourhoods of Ancoats, New Islington and New Cross. Now, they're undergoing significant change all of themselves, but now we can start regenerating together. These can build on the strengths of each other. We can actually have something that's mutually cooperative and better than the sum of its parts. But there aren't only opportunities just in the regional centre. Actually, there's a lot more to be done outside of the conurbation, or in the wider conurbation, on the back of some of our transport investment. What we're looking to do is to build on some of our transport hubs that we've got, the interchanges that we've got, to regenerate there as well. We can use the strategic regeneration, the spatial framework that Eamon's talked about before to build on that. We can use devolution, the granting of more powers, to actually start doing something rather different. What that really means is that we can start to look at the new sites that we're going to be developing in Wigan, in Stockport, in Ashton, and say, what can we really do with those? How could we develop it? Now, that could mean residential, it could mean new homes, retail, leisure, it could mean all kinds of development, but it really depends on the location and what's appropriate to them. Our minds are very open. The exercise is in its pilot phase right now. We've had a look at the opportunities, we're looking at the constraints, we're looking at the delivery models that might be out there to do more with it. At this point, I'd love to say this is going to be the equivalent of Kowloon, but I know that it isn't quite going to work like that, but it is something that we should be looking in a more entrepreneurial way to develop. We've done some soft market testing. We know that there's interest out there. We know that the model works. We can really start to look at bringing together transport interchanges, making public transport a more of a viable choice. You're now putting people's residential close to public transport assets, gets people out of the car. It's what we want to see and what we want to do. So my message is that transport investment and development have always gone hand in hand. They've always been a successful blend. Now we've got the potential with Transport for the North, with a Northern Powerhouse, with devolution, to bring these together and to do far better with what we've got. Thanks very much. Karen.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, John's certainly given you all food for thought with the vision and ambition. And I think in terms of some of the work that we've been looking at a Greater Manchester level and at Salford, I think transport connectivity really places Greater Manchester at the heart of a northern super economy, is how I'd like to think of it. As Howard said before, I'm going to brief you on Port Salford. It's come up a number of times about the importance of freight and logistics and the growth sector. I'm sure a number of you in the room have hopefully heard of Port Salford, but I really just want to go through a bit more about, you know, where it is, why we're doing it, where it's up to, and what next. So in terms of Port Salford, it's part of the Atlantic Gateway, Peel's vision connecting the Port of Liverpool through to the Manchester Ship Canal. And hopefully Joe Anderson won't stay true to his word and turn off the tap of the Mersey, otherwise we won't be able to deliver any of this. And Peel have joint ventured with Macquarie to help bring this forward. Port Salford on the right-hand side of that slide is at the centre point to Manchester's Western Gateway. And obviously with the direct connections to the Port of Liverpool, which will be opening spring this year, it really does give a fantastic opportunity to reuse again the Manchester Ship Canal. And apparently it's the first time in 125 years that this has all been in one ownership to enable this to happen. In terms of, well, why do we need all of this? This slide's quite compelling when you look at it. So 65% of the population live in the north and including Ireland. But if you look at this, 91% of the containers are coming into the south and the southern ports. So how do we get our market share? How do we get those opportunities for the north and the northern powerhouse? Not only will it eliminate the unnecessary road miles, but it'll also help create jobs and prosperity. So in terms of Port Salford, what is it? This just gives you a bit of schematic. It's just off junction 11 of the M60. It'll be the first UK inland trimodal port. So the port facility, obviously with the ship canal, a link through to the Manchester-Liverpool railway, and the road infrastructure, which any of you have been to see Sail Sharks or Salford Reds, you know is underway at the moment. There's outline planning in place for the initial phase, which is 1.5 million square feet of warehousing and logistics facilities, and also for the port facility where the rail link will go and the road infrastructure. We talked before, earlier on this week, about the importance of infrastructure and the challenge with the amount of funding. So in terms of getting the funding sources, we worked really closely with the Greater Manchester Investment Fund and secured £15 million through Regional Growth Fund, plus Salford City Council put in their investment alongside Peel and their joint venture partner Macquarie. So where's it up to? If any of you have driven across Barton Bridge recently, you may have seen these 4 35-metre tall columns and wondered perhaps what they are. These are to support the lifting bridge which will go across the ship canal. And also this provides then the road connection. You can see the stadium in the background linking through to Port Salford and then back to the M60. This will be open in summer this year. So, you know, we're delighted that this is now making progress to make all this happen and this work. Last year at MIPIM, Peel announced that they had exchanged with an occupier, and that is Kalina. So you can see that top left and top right, which is on site at the moment, and that facility will be open next month. Kalina, I don't know if people have heard of them, but they are the market leader in food and drink logistics. And this is both a consolidation and expansion for them. That facility is 280,000 square feet, and there'll be 250 jobs. And I've been assured that about 80% live within a 5-mile radius of this area, so fantastic for the local economy. Also, Kalina announced just last week that they've brought Great Bear, so they're just expanding their whole portfolio of logistics across the whole of the country. Part of their attraction for wanting to come to Port Salford, not only of the location, but also because they want to use that port facility. The bottom left photo shows that there is a shuttle there at the moment. Obviously, it's limited to the containers it can carry, but it's already being used both from an import point of view for companies such as Kingsland Wine, and export for companies such as Kellogg's, who are based at Trafford Park. And then on the right-hand side shows the proposed port facility, which will be able to transport over 470,000 containers per annum, which will certainly help in terms of the freight distribution. So hopefully this has given you a bit of a flavour about Port Salford and its crucial part of the northern powerhouse and the ambition for the freight and logistics growth. And all of this will help support the growth of Greater Manchester economy. Thank you very much.